Let's speak with Jim Dale, meteorologist and author, and Chris Morrison, environment editor at the Daily Sceptic. Chris, firstly, look, all very well. Who doesn't want to save money? If it saves money, all well and good. But do we need to do it? There's the question. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Solar panels, well, probably the silliest idea that the Green Lobby has had so far, particularly in Britain. The World Bank did a survey about 4 years ago, and they found out of 242 countries, I think, where they looked at how viable solar panels were, Britain was 241st. It's completely crazy. We had whole periods in the winter where the sun doesn't shine; it only shines for a short time, and so we have all this. We have also. I was listening to you earlier, obviously, when I was going to come on, and I heard you had Dale Vince on. And I think the question to ask Dale in this day, where we are intruding on private grief, the decline of net zero, but the question to ask Dale, who incidentally has taken £110 million of subsidies in the last 20 years from the British taxpayer for his onshore windmills, is how many bats have you killed today, Vince? Or rather, how many of your wind turbines have?
He says he doesn't take any subsidies at all and never has done.
No. I know,
I appreciate he's not here at the moment.
Sure.
But...
No, I think he says he doesn't take dividends. He doesn't say dividends, but the subsidies, of course, the subsidies available to all windshore operators, the ones that we pay £15 billion a year for every single year on our bills.
All right. Let me just put that first point, though, about solar panels to Jim Dale. Afternoon to you, Jim.
How are you? Good afternoon.
One of the greatest wastes of money, don't do anything, net zero. We're mourning the end of it. These are the words of Chris, our other guest here. Your response?
No, this is the words of the right and the far right, to be honest with you, the fossil fuelers of this world who've been around trying to knock it till kingdom come, to be honest with you. Look, solar panels have not arrived yesterday. They've been here for some time now. They'll continue to aggregate across the country. That's without a shadow of a doubt. It's going in the right direction. I think you've got to ask those people who've got solar panels and they're working and they're actually paying money back to the grid. In other words, that they're actually being paid for their production. So this silliness about being held ransom to the likes of Putin with gas and oil is silliness. And I know why Chris is saying what he's saying, because he's represented by oil companies, fuel companies, and the innuendo he puts out about Dale Vince, obviously it's a script he came on with. It's bogus. It's just absolutely bogus, and he shouldn't be allowed to get away with things like this. Let's be clear. On a day like today, we're going to break the May the 1st record. Okay, it's just about there now, and it will break it. This is after record after record after record. The reason net zero is in place, one of the reasons why we're moving to solar power and wind power is simply because the climate is going in the wrong direction. And although 27 degrees might be nice for a lot of people out there, and I'm not knocking it, our 27 degrees, 28 degrees, 29 degrees is somebody else's 49 degrees down the road. Make that absolutely clear, and people die in that. Chris misses it because his eyes are on a big oil pot and the money that's behind it. I don't. I'm a meteorologist. I see the data. The data isn't screwed.
Okay.
That's why we need to go forward with this.
Well, there you are, Chris. I mean, you're essentially just in bed with the oil companies, according to Jim. That's what it's all about, and that's the angle you speak from. So you're not a credible witness.
Well, I would warn Jim to be very careful of putting out allegations like that. It's caused people like Chris Packham a lot of trouble in the past. I don't take a penny from hydrocarbon interests, and I resent the fact...
You didn't say it was personal, Chris.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were.
My words, please.
Right. You were just talking about far-right people.
In a personal
if you did not interrupt, I didn't interrupt you, so if I interrupt. The fact is that Jim talks about, he's a great one for pointing out the window and saying, "Oh, it's hot today. The world is collapsing." What we have seen, of course, and please don't interrupt. I didn't interrupt you. What we see, of course, is that we see that there is no climate collapse, that we're intruding on private grief here because net zero is collapsing, partly because the science behind it is undermined. There is no climate crisis. The IPC doesn't say there's a climate crisis. The IPC says quite clearly in its assessment reports, if you read them, that extreme weather has not increased in the last 100 years and that humans have got nothing to do with it. Jim often comes on these programs and talks about the wildfires in America. A paper written recently showed that wildfires in America were a quarter of the last 100 years that they were in the historical record going back to 1600. So all of these scares have been whipped up. All of these scares have been whipped up in order to produce a sort of net zero catastrophe, which is proving, as the events in Spain show, is a catastrophe. It's got nothing to do with Nazi and being
on
far
that,
right.
Jim. On that point that Chris raises about inclemency in the weather and extreme weather conditions, whether you want to talk about smog in the 1950s in London, horrendous fires and hurricanes in the States in the last century and the century before that. I mean, he's got a point there, isn't he? There's a lot of data to show. We've always had terrible weather in different parts occasionally.
When Chris talks about there's no science behind it, the people that I respect are not the people in oil platforms. There are people in NASA and NOAA, in the WMO, in the Hadley Centre in the UK. And by the way, we've in the UK, never mind the US, in the UK, we are already at the highest point in terms of wildfires that we've seen ever. Now, you might not think it's not passed very easily in the news and not registered very much, but to be honest with you, that's exactly where we are. And we're in mid-spring. We're not even halfway through the year yet. So look, the evidence for climate change is, unless you've been living under a stone or unless you're in bed with the oil companies, you've got to be living in cloud cuckoo land not to know that what is going on across the world. All the charts, all the graphs show this and show it so as plain as day. And that's why the stuff that Chris has come out with and other people on his spectrum, it is exactly that. You really have to be a lot stupid to actually not recognise what's going on.
Well, I'll come back to Chris in just a second on the perhaps the allegation of stupidity. But the wider point on all of this, Jim, is that in the last 24 hours, we've had Unite the Union not happy with net zero. We've got Tony Blair, a Labour man through and through, not happy with the direction of travel. And the Norwegians telling us you'd have to be a lunatic to ignore the North Sea. They said it's a clear area where we can make our country more profitable, offer better services. We're not going to put a cork in the pipeline like the United Kingdom are. What do the Norwegians know that we don't know?
I'll tell you what they know. They know they get 50% of their revenue from oil and gas from the UK. That's what they're scared of. But at the same time, let's make it absolutely clear where Norway is in terms of renewables. Okay, 90% of Norway is run by renewables, and the biggest energy operator in Norway is Equinor. You can look it up; it's there. And if you look up on their site and what they say, they are for evolution, not revolution. We're not going to get rid of oil and gas tomorrow. I'm a realist. That's not going to happen, okay? And we know that, and Ed Miliband knows that. Okay. This is a situation where we swap one for the other over a period of a decade or two, and that's the direction of travel. And in fact,
but Ed Miliband doesn't seem to be keen on that, though, does he? Running things in parallel to see how it goes. Mr. Miliband is all for sticking concrete down shafts and blocking up pipes.
Sorry, I missed who you said it was there.
Mr. Miliband. He's the Energy Secretary, Jim.
No, Mr. Miliband's going in the right direction. I think there's a lot of quotes from him, particularly from the right-wing press. Most of these stories that you quoted come from the Mail. They come from the Telegraph. They're well known for being where Chris is, essentially.
Well, maybe they're just the organisations that choose to publish it where others maybe choose to ignore it, if you look at it that way.
No, they choose to make it up as they go along.
All right, well, Chris, what do you say to that? Norway apparently get a lot of their stuff, 50% of their oil from the UK. I must admit, I didn't know that. Stand to be corrected. And they're reliant mostly anyway on renewables, so, they're just being sensible about it.
Yes, I mean, they have a wealth fund of about £1.3 trillion, much of which we contributed to, and they can virtue signal all they like because they're still opening their gas spigots to people in this country who stopped it. What is happening here is well, Jim knows this, is crazy. First of all, we've seen the experience in Spain in the last few days. Wind and solar are the wrong sort of power to put into a modern industrial grid. They cause problems with the frequency. They come in and out. They cause enormous problems. And this is what we've seen in Spain. It's been covered up in the mainstream media, right wing and left wing. Jim always seems to find any media is based on political terms. It's been sort of come off the headlines because this was the inevitable result of putting wind and solar, unstable, unreliable renewables into the grid. Now,
Chris, that's unfounded.
Excuse me, Jim. I'd never interrupt you if I could. I know you want to jail me, by the way. I'm surprised that we're having this convivial chat in Ian's studio here.
Yeah,
Because
I think climate change
record, remember last year, is wanting to jail.
You think Chris should be in jail, Jim?
No, I think it's not the way it works. Make it absolutely clear. I mean, I'm very much in favour, as Dale Vince is in favour, and others in favour of making climate denial for the reason of the danger to not just our nation, but every nation. The children, the grandchildren are growing up. These people are going to be in trouble in the future. So my view is that in law, when it goes through Parliament, if it ever gets through Parliament, probably will not in this Parliament, but whatever, the climate denial of the likes of what Chris is advocating should become illegal, and therefore, I'm not saying jail necessarily, but fines or whatever. That's in the pipeline. That will happen at some point when the climate crunch occurs, when in terms of a widespread crunch rather than just here and there as it is at the moment.
Well, when you say a crunch, do you mean like a big event that once and for all settles it? Is that,
it's going to take exactly that for that to, and that's more than, say, 50,000 people dying in Europe during 2022 heat wave, for example.
All right.
It's going to take more than that, but it's coming.
Chris, just before they cuff you and take you away to Parkhurst, can we just get a word on Jim's point there, that there is an event, something seismic's going to happen where the likes of you, Chris, and others will have to go, do you know what, I hold my hands up, Governor, I got this completely wrong, this place is falling apart.
Well, we've had these tipping points for the last 20 years and none of them occurred. And so we have the Arctic sea ice growing back since certainly in the last 10 years and has been on a pause for 20 years. More polar bears than you can shake a stick at. Antarctica ice, the temperature hasn't warmed there for 70 years. More coral in record amounts on the Great Barrier Reef, as I talked about the wildfires. So when Jim wants to put me in jail, or whatever he wants to do, and says that people will be coming after me in the next few years, I ask him, what am I denying? I look at the data. I look at the extreme weather data. I look at all of the indices. I look at even what the IPC has written. And there is not a scintilla of proof for anything that people like Mr. Dale say. There is no climate emergency.
What's the deal? You're both looking at the same data here, aren't you, surely?
No,
but extrapolating different answers. Jim?
Ian, Chris is not looking at the same data. This is the whole point. He's looking at made-up stuff. He's looking at old stuff that gets regurgitated every so often and pushed out. I hear it all the time. And to be honest with you, most of it comes out of America. Most of it comes out of the Global Warming Policy Foundation, which is a network of almost underground, let's just say, not factual information that gets put out on social media that Chris picks up. That's what he's reading, okay? And look with your own eyes. Look with your own eyes at what's going on. Even today, to a certain degree, I'm not saying you can't get one-off heat waves. You can, of course you can. But the combination of what we are seeing, without a shadow of a doubt, backed up by the likes of NASA, who send people to the moon and Mars and the rest of it. Never mind Chris's bits of scribbled paper on the desk. That's
Jim, just a final point. Chris, you're gathering your information from old sources, essentially, is what Jim is saying. Speak to the boys and girls at NASA and they'll put you right.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the IPCC. I don't know what data Jim is looking at. He can say that's scribbled under the table and supported by fossil fuel and all the other nonsense that he comes up with. I'll give you one final thing. Professor Richard Lindzen, emeritus professor at Harvard, a brilliant man, a brilliant atmospheric professor, who said that we will look back on the late 20th century, the first part of the 21st century, and we will look at climate. This whole thing to do with climate will be one of the greatest scientific frauds that we've ever seen. Another 2022 man who won the Nobel Physics Prize, a giant of modern science, Dr. John Clauser, says that the whole narrative that Jim expresses is a crock of crap. So when he says that I'm just looking at some sort of underground, conspiracy theory, I'm not.
All right. Okay. Listen, we could go on for much longer. Jim, thank you for your time. Jim Dale, meteorologist and author. Chris Morrison, environment editor at the Daily Skeptic. Thank you to both of them.